version of the song. Subtle little twists, move it in slightly new direction, push it in slightly different ways to think about the words differently and what the song is saying. Our story for today is a similar kind of thing, I think. It's something that went sideways in an unexpected way with, I don't think, exactly the outcome that was originally intended. Let me illustrate it this way. About 5 or 6 years ago, I discovered I have acid reflux issues. And how I discovered is, I think there were signs going on for a while and I didn't quite get them. And it was a super hot day in the 90s, and we were at Sawdust Days, and I got some homemade ice cream, and I took a spoonful, and it went down, and my whole esophagus went, and I'm like, never done that before. And, you know, being the good person I am, I thought, well, if I just wait around long enough, maybe it'll go back to how it should be, and I don't have to deal with it. And from that day on, it didn't. Something felt funny, and everything I ate for the next week and a half wasn't right, and it was sort of hurt a little bit. So finally, after about a week and a half, I thought, you know, it isn't going away as quick as I'd like. The ability to live in denial is kind of slowly fading away, so maybe what I should do is I'll call and see if I can get in sometime in the next few days and see my doctor, and it's something to do with when I eat, and it's no major thing. So I call up, and they get me to the scheduler, and they want, well, what exactly is going on? Well, here's the mistake I made, and I've probably mentioned this before. I said the magic words unknowingly. I said, well, you see, I have this pain in my chest, which immediately stopped the conversation. It was no longer, and I said, you know, what happens when I eat, it feels like, didn't want to hear that. I said the magic words, pain, chest. They said, we want you here now. Should we send someone to you? If you can't get in now, when can you get in? I'm going to tell the nurse when you're coming. How long will it take you to drive here? And I'm going, but it only happens when I eat. It has to do with eating. And that was it. They didn't care. I said pain and chest together in the same sentence and had to promise them that I would be there within 15 minutes. And so I drove over there, and guess what? They had a room for me. I didn't even have to sit. And then they're like, get your shirt off. And they're like, just a minute. And they came back with razors. I started shaving patches. And I'm thinking, this isn't good. And this isn't going to go over well when I get home. And they hook up stuff. And they make me lay there. And I lay there. And they read data on machines. And then they take blood. And they send the blood down somewhere. And finally, after about 20 minutes, and they take everything off, the doctor comes in, your heart's fine. I know. It bothers me when I eat. Oh, you probably have acid reflux. Here's a pill. Go take this one today. You know, and I'm like, that was not what I thought. I would make an appointment for the next week, and I was just going to go in, and they would say, yeah, you got bad heartburn or something, and here's a pill. No, that's not what happened. And then, of course, when you get home, you're like, okay, now how do you explain this? You know, you got these shaved spotches all over the place. So I figured maybe I just don't say anything, and it'll grow back before it gets noticed. And of course, that's one of those lessons you learn the hard way. Not telling your wife in advance does not lend for great conversations later. So when she saw them, she freaked out and had issues. And we had some long talks. And I now have a set of protocol. When stuff doesn't go right and it goes sideways, I know what I need to do now. I've learned. But this is, you know, here's Jesus walking along and he sees a guy blind from birth. Now there's a couple of really fascinating things that we overlook here. And that is, What is the question his disciples ask first? Did he sin or did his parents sin? Do you get the significance of that? Because see, in Israel's mind right now, they don't have this vision of heaven and hell like more modern people think, although today some people are shifting. The church has many visions of heaven and hell. They're very different visions. And you know, if you take Paul in the New Testament, he never even mentions hell. What's going on is their belief is that if your grandparents sinned and you had a malformity, that was why. In other words, your hell was the bad stuff happened to you, which might be your fault, might be your parents' fault, might be your grandparents' fault. You follow? So the question they're really asking is, is this hell? You know, is he paying for the screw-up of his parents or his grandparents? And part of that is what helps keep the rules working. I grew up where I was taught if I didn't follow the rules, I'm going to hell. They grew up being taught if you don't follow the rules, your kids or grandkids could be born with problems. Make sense? So it's so the question they're asking is not the question, we read it, we gloss over it, but they're really asking a powerful question about why do certain things happen in the world? Is it a result of us screwing up, or our grandparents screwing up, or our great-grandparents screwing up? And part of that is that helps to keep order, helps to keep people following the rules, helps to keep people lining up. And Jesus' response is an interesting response. He says, no, it has nothing to do with sin. He was born blind. In fact, it's an opportunity for you to see what God is really about. It's like saying, this is one of those learning moments. This just happens to be a learning moment for you to really get who God's about. Because how are they struggling with God? That whole question of who sinned, what's their image of God? God's a punisher. Their whole image of God is what God wants to do is punish you for screwing up. That's all God cares about. And their way of thinking was that's who God is. And Jesus is already coming along. We've said this for a few times already in Lent. And is trying to say, are you really hearing who God is? Are you really understanding what God is about? And now here's this blind person who thinks, object lesson. I'll show him what God's really about. Of course, spitting in mud, wiping you spittle mud on your eye, it's an interesting object lesson. And I don't know that I'd like someone to spit mud. And although when I've been stung by bees, I do remember having someone spit mud and put that on the bee sting. So I suppose in some ways it's okay, but I don't know that I want someone to spit in my eyes. But he spits on the mud, or dirt, makes the mud, sticks it on the eyes, says, go wash. He washes and now he can see. So in a sense, Jesus is doing two really cool things. One is he's helping a blind person see, which not only helps him see, because we know from the story he was a beggar, which means he was handicapped enough that he was not allowed to work no matter what, and his only way to support himself was to beg for food. So he's at the bottom of the social class because all he can do is beg to stay alive, and his life is dependent on people willing to give to him as a beggar. So that would put him in a category where he wouldn't get interactions with the community. He has a place in the community which is on the fringe. He's really outside of the community. So Jesus restores a blind man to see, which opens up the world of possibilities of what he can do with his life, but also restores him to community, restores him to family. And the other thing he's doing is he's helping the people around see that God is not focused on, I want to go punish the bad people. You screwed up, your kid's going to be deformed because of it. And that God's just not in the business of wanting to mess with people because they screwed up. But that's not how it went, is it? The blind man did see. In fact, he got excited. His life has changed. His life's turned upside down. He got excited, and right away, the people in the community, and these are common people. These aren't the upper class. These are common people, and they respond. Some are like, wow, he was blind and now he sees. Others are like, oh, that's someone else. He just looks like him. And right away, you have this confusion, this hesitation, this struggle with what's going on. And so what do? They take him to the religious authorities. Not just any religious authorities. They take him to the Pharisees. And again, the Pharisees, these aren't bad people. What the Pharisees are trying to do is they passionately believe that if they could get all of Israel to follow God's moral laws correctly, then God would send a Messiah, would overthrow the Roman Empire, and would reestablish Israel and set things right. God would fulfill some of those promises about bringing about the kingdom of God here on earth. And the way to do it was to get everybody to follow the moral rules. Hence, you want people believing that if bad stuff happens to your kid, it's because you sinned and didn't follow the moral rules. So how do you get them to follow the rules? You tell them things that get them to think bad stuff's going to happen to them if they don't follow the rules. Right? And then you got to punish the people who decide to not follow the rules and the bad stuff doesn't happen to them. You got to punish them so they learn their lesson. Right? So it's not that they're bad, it's just that they have this tunnel vision of how to make God happy. And that vision of how to make God happy is, let's get everybody to follow these certain set of rules. And so they have a narrow construct, a narrow vision of who God is and how God is supposed to be working in their lives. And so the crowd, the community brings them to the Pharisees, and right away the Pharisees start asking questions. Were you blind? Yeah. Now you see. Yeah. How'd that happen? Who did it? You know, and tells the story. And then the first issue that rises up from one group of Pharisees is what? He did it on what day of the week?
The Sabbath.
The Sabbath. So if he's a good, faithful, religious person following the laws of God, the moral laws of God, and doing everything correctly, do you heal on Sundays? No, that's nap day. That's why we have football. So you can fall asleep watching football and overeat, right? Sunday meal. Not the day for healing. You can do that on Monday through, well, his day would be Sunday through Friday. We think in terms of Monday through Saturday. But, you know, you got other days of the week. Couldn't you wait a day? But another group says, hold on. Only God does this kind of thing. So even though it's done on the Sabbath, this is the kind of thing God does. And they were struggling. How do we resolve it? What's the real issue going on? I think the real issue that's going on that they're not ready to say yet, and they never really directly say is this. They're the religious authority. They're the people who are looked up, revered the most. This is, the priestly order. So the people come and they bring their offerings, and the priestly order supports their family, their house. Everything comes from the offerings given. They're the ones who are supposed to be the most holy, living the closest to what God wants, the closest one to God, the one through whom God should be doing things. And here's this Jesus, who's a nobody, hick from a nobody town, and he's just done a God thing, hasn't he? It's a blind from birth person who can now see. So what's in the back of their mind? Whether they'll admit it or not, a couple of things. If he's truly with God, he's doing things that we're the ones who are supposed to be with God and we're not doing. So what justifies us getting the income we have to keep the lifestyle and the family and the house we have? And what's the other unspoken elephant? If he can take a blind person and make them see, and this is godly, then what if God gives him the power to take seeing people and make them blind? You see the tension here? They're the ones, these are the God representatives, and here he's doing a godly thing, which means there's some very dangerous potential here. There's some extremely uncomfortable, dangerous potential here. So they have sort of a rough interaction with this blind man, don't like his answers. They ask him, well, who do you think he is? He says a prophet. That doesn't bode well, because what were things that the prophets did? When the prophets were showing people that God is God, there were times where the enemies were wiped out in mass. So if he can take a blind person and make them see, can he take seeing people and make them blind or do worse? Especially if he's a prophet. There's tension. I get why the Pharisees are struggling here. This is a threat. It's raising huge questions. Who is God? What is God about? And is raising huge questions about everything. The structure, the system, and how things work. So they go and get his parents. And say to his parents, was your son blind? Yeah. Does he see now? Yeah. How did this happen? We don't know. It's a great parent answer. Is this a good place to be? Here's the religious authorities who are now struggling with what happened to our son because of some stranger. Which side do we want to be on this? We want to be the side of, don't notice us. We're not here. And their answer is a simple answer. He's an adult. Go talk to him. Leave us out of this. But it even says they're afraid. They're afraid of what might happen. They're afraid of what might happen to them. That they could be kicked out of the synagogue, be kicked out of any connection with God. That's like saying you are guaranteed to go to hell. You are guaranteed that your life is going to be horrible. You are guaranteed that your kids, grandkids, everyone's life is going to be horrible. That's what they're afraid of. And again, they're still functioning with what's God about in their minds? Judging people who don't play by the rules. And here's the people, Pharisees, who tell you what the rules are. They're scared. So they say, talk to our son, don't talk to us. We weren't there. Go talk to him. So they bring him back in for a second time. And it gets really interesting because the second time now they're a little bit more hostile to him. And they're asking the questions a little bit more intensely. And his responses are interesting. One of his responses, he says, "Oh, I told you already, and you wouldn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become disciples of him?" I think it's actually, I almost read it as a naivete, like, I was blind, now I can see, I'm following this guy. Are you guys wanting to follow him too? He's just interacting, and it makes sense. I was outside a community of beggar, now I'm restored to community, and I have new life, new beginning, new possibilities. I'm going to follow this guy and learn more. You guys probably want to too. Probably doesn't even get the tension in the room. If he was a beggar his whole life, I doubt he would get any of the tension of what's going on in the room. And they immediately did what? They reviled him. Now they're not trying to learn. Their whole attitude has changed. They reviled him. And you say, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses. Now, of course, when was Moses? How many years before? 3,000? So it's interesting, this whole dichotomy. See, we know Moses. Well, no, you know the Torah. You know the traditions of Israel. But it's interesting where they go back to. And that's usually actually the Sadducees' response would be, we know Moses. So it's interesting that they even made that response there. But the response is, we know Moses. And the man responds with this, here is an astonishing thing to me. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, hence bad things happen to you when you sin. But he does listen to the one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. And they drove him out after chastising him. You were born in sin, and you are teaching us about sin. Your blindness shows you were born in sin. You are a bad apple. You have no grounds to teach us anything. And they drove him out. What's amazing, though, is that Jesus actually goes and seeks him out after this. All he tried to do was heal a blind person and help him see God differently. And the guy gets attacked for seeing on the Sabbath. And Jesus seeks him out, and he says, hey, do you believe in the Son of Man? His code for, John's code for the Messiah. He's like, who is this? I want to know. I am he. And then you get that wonderfully disturbing line, I came to this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. After, what did he say in John 3, 16 and 17? He said, I came to save the world, I did not come to judge it. Now he's using judgment in a slightly different way. I came to show and see. Or, as I kind of read it, what's the unspoken question? If he can make a blind person see, and he's from God, could he give God's wrath and judgment to me and make my seeing eyes go blind? So you can almost read this as a little joking, playing by Jesus going on. It could be read that way. The Pharisees near him heard this, in earshot, heard it. Not that we've ever said stuff for people to hear in earshot before, knowing that they were there pretending we didn't see them. Surely we are not blind, are we? If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say, we see, your sin remains. Your inability to trust God remains. Your focus, your heart set on a God who judges and only cares about moral behavior and doesn't care about you, shows your life and shows your sin. It's a simple story that went sideways. But it was an opportunity for Jesus to push the people around him, to push us. Who is God? How is God in our life? Is God the one who wants to heal us? Is God the one who wants to see us forgiven? Is God the one who wants to love us and does love us? Or is God a judge who simply cares about how are you behaving? How are you acting? And that's it. The challenge for us for this week is to look inside of ourselves and see, are there moments when we let slip into seeing God as this judge alone? Or do we see God as the one who loves us and wants to heal us? And do we let that healing God shape the choices we make, shape the actions we choose, shape what our life looks like in this coming week? Let that be